Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Outlook Business Master Speak. Today, we kickstart a weekly webinar series we have created especially with a focus on how to deal with disruption caused by COVID-19. COVID, no COVID, challenges are a part of life, and we bring to you high-quality speakers from the world of business who have been through several troughs to guide us through how to navigate this period of crisis. Before I introduce today's speaker, a quick thank you to our partners for Master Speak series, presenting sponsor Hyperlink Infosystems and co-sponsor RR Solutions. Today we have K. Ganesh, a serial entrepreneur and a big name from the venture industry. He's promoter director of Big Basket, Blue Stone, Portia Medical, Home Lane, House Joy, Fresh Menu, Hunger Box, Clear Out, Bird Loop. Well, the list is pretty long. Obviously, he's the best name I could think of to answer all the questions we have with respect to how we have to reboot startups that may have completely come to a halt, as well as people who need to speed up from emerging from the lockdown. So thank you so much, Ganesh, for joining us on today's webinar. First off, can you just elaborate on how the startup world has been disrupted because of COVID? And what are the big changes you see in the pre-COVID versus the post-COVID scenario?
Yeah, so thanks. It's a pleasure for me to be here. These obviously are very unprecedented times. All of us, be it in the startup world, be it in the SME or MSME or government or public sector or private, small and large, all of us are struggling to make sense of what's happening. Firstly, the caveat is we still are figuring out because the level of impact is still not known. It's a once in a century pandemic. I've not seen like this before, nothing of global impact. So whatever I may say is with a full disclosure that in 4 weeks to 8 weeks, it will sound stupid or we may have to revise it completely. So that's the first this one. On the positive side, fortunately, startups, entrepreneurs and founders being nimble, being flexible are perhaps the most suited organism to go through this pandemic. Okay, right? Like just like they say in evolution, dinosaurs are the worst suited because of the inflexibility. So this is the opposite. So that's the good news. The bad news is, like small babies, they are also the most vulnerable because they are the weakest amongst all of it. Okay? So that is where we are. Point number one, based on the sector that they are in, either they are directly deeply impacted, like travel or hospitality, or even physical restaurants, or companies or startups that need a physical presence, which because of the lockdown, because of social distancing is not possible. Then you have others who are not directly as much impacted, but there is still an impact that exists. I would put categories like home delivery of essential, like food ordering, cloud kitchens in that category, where there is a reduction for multiple reasons, but it is not being decimated to zero like the way many industries are. The third clearly are things which have got tailwinds, which are getting impacted positively by the epidemic. For example, online grocery delivery, you have seen in the case of companies like we have Big Basket on the own, which is there. And fourth is more structural things which have come up, whether it's companies making masks or making sanitizers or companies that are making things that help in this. So I think there are 4 different categories and the impact of each of the four has been different. But short answer, very badly affected. The reasons are threefold. One is startup by nature are loss making. So they don't make profit. So they burn money every month. So when you're burning money every month, you need investor capital, risk capital. Most of the startups are always in a fundraising mode. A lot of startups are out there raising money, and suddenly now the fundraise has come to a stop, either because people are waiting and watching. No investor wants to catch a falling knife, so they are delayed, put on hold decision making. In some cases, even going back on the discussions or putting them on hold. Two, not initiating new discussions. Therefore, wherever your fundraising was required in order to meet the burn, that has come to a standstill. So that is problem number one. Problem number two, like I mentioned earlier, many of the startups have seen revenues go down to zero. So in addition to the normal burn that exists, today you have a situation there is no revenue, so the burn has doubled or tripled substantially because the revenue has gone down to zero, while the cost cannot go down to zero. Right? That's the second challenge. And third is some of them happen to be in sectors which will take over medium and long time to come back to normal, and which will affect the prospects not just immediate but in years to but in months and quarters and maybe years to come. So all these three have left them the most vulnerable. Unfortunately, the support announced by the government and all of those does not apply directly to the startup sector. So I think combined with all of it, already uncertain, fragile, low probability of success sector, which is what startup is, further gets hit by this. So it's double or triple whammy on top of already a fragile, which is always a fragile ecosystem in case of startup, given the success rate. So that's where we are today. Not happy situation.
Sure. Are there any changes that you see as permanent changes that post-COVID or post this shock? Are there any trends that are here to stay?
Yeah. So I think definitely there are going to be a lot of changes in consumer behavior, changes in the way people act, the way people spend their money, and the way people look at the world. All of it is going to change. Some of them permanently, some of them drastically, some of them to a lesser extent, but will take time to come back. I mean, quite obvious ones are the way we look at social distancing, the way we look at hygiene, the way we look at safety and protecting ourselves from infection. All of this is going to change. Let's take a drastic example. Are people going to feel comfortable going into a, say, 3,000 people cruise liner for 2 weeks, and along with 2,000 people stay in an air-conditioned, recycled environment in a cruise? That's going to take a lot of time for people to adjust. Similarly, more closer to our hearts, will you and I feel comfortable going into an air-conditioned restaurant, sitting on the table next to 30, 40 other families and spending 1 hour there, going into a pub or a dance floor on a pub on a Friday evening, and then spending time there, being with people, strangers? Very unlikely. So that has become one permanent change. Second change, of course, is the Zoom calls that we do, like the video conferencing that we do. Just the concept that because we have been forced now to change consumer behavior to remote working, video conferencing, remote meetings, getting used to it and seeing the benefits of such a thing happening without the downsides of having to travel cost and time. So I think there will be a lot more of work from home, remote working, video conferencing that will take place. We have seen this in Big Basket. Despite having Shah Rukh Khan as a brand ambassador, despite having 8 years of television advertising, people did not switch to online buying on grocery. Right? Big Basket could not have done more to popularize the brand. But come lockdown and COVID, these die-hard non-online grocery buyers have come by millions to adopt online buying. Like the way demonetization forced digital payment and helped fintech companies, literally forced. This has forced people to go and buy online, especially grocery and this. So we have seen this in Portia Medical, which is our healthcare company for outside of hospital. People have started taking chemotherapy at home. Okay, it was not done earlier, right? But now it is always possible. We used to offer it earlier, but the adoption just was not there. Now we have had people taking chemotherapy at home because A, they can't go to a hospital. Hospitals are busy. More importantly, even if they can go, they don't want to go because they are afraid of secondary infections at hospital. which was always there. We used to talk about it, but it was not taken seriously. People will take hygiene, hand washing, infection seriously there. So these are all going to change permanently forever. Some of the people on the fringes will go back to old behavior, but things like remote working, things like online home delivery of stuff, healthcare outside of hospital, entire infection management, all of this will change permanently forever. I can go sector by sector, but this is what is going to be. Even if you take holidays and tourism, the current thinking, which I feel, this is in my mind now, I don't know how fast it will change, is that I still obviously want to go on holiday. I want to enjoy life. I'm not going to be cooped up in a lockdown situation, but I would prefer to drive rather than go on a flight. I would not like to go on a long distance flight. If I'm driving, I would like to drive with my family in a car with known people only, and go not to a big air conditioned thing, but an open resort. Go to a beach, go to open resort, stay at a small place, stay away from others, but still enjoy all of that holiday. So holiday is going to become more of driving holiday, more of smaller gatherings rather than large gathering, trying to go to huge convention center and resorts to be with and have buffet, morning breakfast buffet with 400 people. That seems to be unlikely to me now. So many of it is wait and watch also, but these are the directions at which we are seeing.
When you look at some of these opportunities, for example, now e-learning is one opportunity which you didn't mention, but it's coming up in a big way. There are a lot of startups because schools are forced again to adopt e-learning. Similarly, now you're talking about driving holidays. There are not too many companies which have explored driving holidays. They're very far and few in between, but then that's again seems to be a preference. So wherever there are these trends that are getting established because of COVID. We know that it's going to last 6 months or a 1 year. We don't know how long, but then it won't last forever. So how do you think about strategizing to capture the value in some of these opportunities that are emerging because of COVID, but may not last beyond COVID? How do you think about these?
Yeah, no, so I think it's a great question, right? So and you have answered it a bit yourself in your question, that these will not last forever. But what it does is it forces consumer trial, consumer adoption at almost zero cost because it is forced on them. Okay, which otherwise would have taken for any startup or B2C company millions of dollars to induce the trial. See, what were e-commerce companies doing? What were all our new age companies doing? Whether it's Potia Medical, whether it is Big Basket, whether it is Bluestone, whatever is the company they were trying to induce through discounts, through offering, through promotions, through marketing spend, consumer to come and change their behavior and to try to try to experience a current need of a product or a service, but try to experience it through online or through a technology platform or a new marketplace. We are spending millions of dollars. Now, what has COVID done? It had made the millions of dollars is unnecessary. They are forced to try it. The millions of people who came to Big Basket post lockdown, the thousands of people who came to Potia for healthcare to be delivered at home, did not come because of any inducement, it came because there was no choice. But this accelerated what we would have acquired as trial consumers. Over the next 3-4 years, after spending millions of dollars, what we would have got in a normal situation, we have got it suddenly thanks to pandemic. It is exactly like the vegetable vendor or Kirana store guy downloading Paytm app and saying Paytm, we accept Paytm. Happened overnight because of demonetization, which would have taken Paytm at least another 5 years before that Kirana store guy or a vegetable vendor would have accepted. That is now what has happened. So, which is a great artificial, huge fillip or a push that has happened, right? So now the way to capitalize it is that instead of 4 years, you have got it now. Instead of spending $2 million or $10 million and getting it, you got the users now. Now, can you satisfy the users who have come in, courtesy COVID? Can you deliver them what they want? Can you give them a good experience? And can you keep retaining them so that they will keep coming back to you post-COVID also, because they have got used to it. The beauty about habits is that once you see and you're comfortable, your inertia is removed, your resistance is removed, and you have tasted the convenience, you will not go back. How many of us will go and stand in a queue in a travel agency or a bank to withdraw cash? We are not going to. We are going to do it out of ATM. Okay? We are not going to. That's a human tendency. Now that has been forced now instead of taking and waiting for another 4 years. So that's what it is. So what do startups and companies need to do is take this as a godsend boon that has happened, jackpot that has come in. Ensure that you don't waste the jackpot that has been handed over to you. Be smart and sensible. It also means choose your customers wisely. Don't get carried away. A lot of people will come to you because of the current situation. But over medium and long term, are they your desirable customers? Can you deliver value consistently to them and then do that? Nothing wrong in the startups being opportunistic. Today you see lots of people getting into grocery delivery. Everybody is a grocery delivery. Even we have our own companies like HouseJoy, which do handyman services, getting into grocery, because that's opportunistic. That's fine. I mean, that's a normal entrepreneur. That's fine. But do they want to continue? Can they build a service and compete with a Big Basket or Grofers or the world later? Is a fundamental question they need to answer. But what it does to them is experience the customer HouseJoy, albeit for a different service. Can they from there bridge it? So that's what is important. Like we have seen home chemotherapy. Will all the people taking home chemotherapy later continue to take? Maybe not. But because of this, they have experienced Portea Medical. They know the benefits of telemedicine. They know the benefits of having one healthcare company on call and the convenience of dealing with one player, which never existed before, doesn't exist today. Because of that, can I sell other services, other needs of them? I have got into inroads into the family and family's health status. Can I service? Those would determine long-term value creation of COVID benefits.
Sure. So that leads me to the next question. When you're thinking about diversification opportunity, for example, you are not in the logistics space or delivery space, and you look at an opportunity there and you want to get there. Or for example, for Portea, perhaps it's an easier call because it's in the same line of business and it's about extending yourself and growing faster. Now, when we are looking at a alternate business, which is an opportunistic move, is there a framework to think about? How do you go about that expansion? What kind of fixed costs should you really be able to, should you really account for? Should you take on fixed costs at all, or should you wait for time to do it? Is it just that, you step off your existing business, use this opportunity, then come back to it because when the disruption is kind of, coming to an end? Is there a framework to think about how to think about opportunistic diversification at this point?
Yeah. So therefore, it would depend a lot upon what is the kind of headwinds and tailwinds your business is actually facing. Right? Let's take one extreme case. Because of COVID, what's going to happen in the next few months and during the recovery phase and whenever new normal comes? If it's likely to happen that your business is going to be deeply affected, then you really are in a desperate situation. You have to pivot, or whatever you want to call, diversify. You want to recreate the business from scratch because you are facing a existential threat. Correct? That's one extreme example. Okay, right? Other extreme, okay, right? Where the headwinds are so strong, you have no choice but to deeply look at it. Right? The other situation, other extreme situation is that you've got tailwinds. Your customers in your own area have got enhanced need or more stronger reason to adopt your kind of a model than like a outside of hospital healthcare model versus in the hospital healthcare model. That's another example where we can continuously develop software. In between these two extremes are a situation where the company is facing consumers whose priorities, whose fears, whose decision-making requirements, all of it has changed. It has changed now. So, but the need is still there. So they need to offer a different value proposition to the same consumer. So between the two extremes, this is a lot of companies face this. I'll give you some examples of what I'm talking about. Talking about here. Okay, right. Take for example, Cloud Kitchen. We have companies like Fresh Menu and GrowFit. In that particular space, you have delivery aggregators like Swiggy and Zomato. Right? Take a typical consumer for it. What was the consumers? Take a college student or a bachelor. Why were they going there? What was the important parameters in their mind for purchasing on this? One, it should be available immediately. When they search on the app, they are searching when they are feeling hungry. They want the food to be delivered in the next 20-30 minutes. And availability of the food immediately was top priority number one. Priority number two was discounts. Okay, right? Price, because this is a category which is price sensitive. So if food is available within immediately and discounts are available, they will order. And the third thing is variety of choice. They can choose. They don't want to have the same food. You've got falafel, you've got Lebanese food, you've got something subject to criteria, one variety of choice. This is what is the decision making that is required.
Right.
So the entire product, the app, the value proposition, the way Swiggy went about building their business, the way Fresh Menu went about building their business was exactly to cater to this customer base, use case, product market fit, whatever jargon you want to call it. Now come COVID, all of this is completely changed on the head. Okay. What are the same customer profile target segment want? Is immediate availability an issue? It is not an issue because they are staying at home. They have all the time. They have time to plan. They have everything. They're thinking about food throughout the day because there is not much else to do. Therefore, there is absolutely, it's out of the door. What is the top number one criteria and priority? Is the food safe?
Right.
Will I catch the virus? So safety is number one. It is no longer immediate availability. It is no longer variety of choice. It is the same available. So the brand, the comfort, the trust that the food will be safe is number one priority. For that, they are willing to wait for 25 minutes more, 30 minutes more, 1 hour more. They are willing to order in advance. They are willing to pay a bit more. They are willing to go through lots of other things going on. Similarly with price. Price is important, but no longer in top of the criteria. They would rather pay, instead of 120 rupees, they would pay 140 rupees and be safe from virus. Both because of the fear of virus, also because they have saved a lot of money by not going into restaurant, not partying. They have more discretionary spending time. So this has changed. So what do companies have to do? They have to design the product for this. So no point in saying that I offer 10-minute delivery. More important to say that I'll take it 25 minutes. So that is what is consistently happening. In case of Portea Medical, for example, elective surgery, elective physiotherapy has been deeply affected because people don't want physiotherapy. They don't want external people coming and all that. Okay, right? So that product market fit for physiotherapy sessions is no longer there. Okay, right? But you still require various other nursing attendant, drug infusion work that is required. Right? You require ICU at home. So repurposing the physiotherapists for a different need today is required till the time physiotherapy needs starts coming back slowly and elective physiotherapy starts. If you take something like a haircut or a salon, beauty parlor, facial, hair dyeing, they will still come back. Correct? People may not do it now, but will get opened up. But cosmetic surgery, denture fixing, braces, Botox injection will take a lot more time to come back. So if you're a company making Botox or in the business of Botox or facial reconstruction, plastic surgery for beauty, you're going to take a lot of time. Can you Can you change your offering to make it something more meaningful? Can you do something quicker, shorter, at home delivered, maybe facial and spa and something like that, so that people feel good about it? So those are the kind of things that companies and entrepreneurs need to do to capture the opportunity. Okay, right? And latch on to something that will build value over long term. When the lockdown has ended, when normalcy has returned, even when new normal comes in, and don't let go of this opportunity, which is a godsend boon to get new users with new thinking and new levers of decision making into your doorstep.
So at this point, we'll take a 5-second break and come back. When we come back, we'll talk about growth. Yeah. So my next question is, how do you deal with growth? In the sense, today there are businesses where they were growing at an X rate before that, and as you correctly said, with startups there is daily goal. I mean, this is what you do every day. Every at the end of every day, at the end of every week, at the end of every month, you have a certain target to meet, and all of it costs money. So, how do you really think about growth as we start to come off the lockdown? Um, do you take on what kind of businesses should slam the brakes or slow down versus the kind of businesses that must really go for the kill?
So, no, growth is obviously there on top of the mind. All of us entrepreneurs, and even in corporate CEOs or CXOs or the management team, all of us are people who are got a DNA, who are experts, or who get complimented and hired for growth, for increasing market share, for increasing valuation, for hiring more people, for capturing new market, for diversification, for geographic expansion. That's all of that in our DNA. That's what is expected of us. That's what we are rewarded for. That's what we are geared for. That's what we enjoy doing. Unfortunately, this pandemic is a time where none of those skills are needed or relevant. What is relevant now is conservatism. How do you cut costs? How do you survive? How do you ensure that you stay alive during the pandemic? So all these skill sets are very, very different, right? So it's exactly the opposite. And for some of us who are old, who have been through multiple cycles, who have done this time, so at least we have faced before. We do have a lot of young entrepreneurs. We have a lot of young managers and executives and CEOs who are young, who are facing this for the first time. So it becomes doubly difficult for them to handle it. The short answer is that this is the time where you hunker down, where you look at how to survive this with least amount of damage, how not to fail, how not to shut down. Just like in a war, your goal is first to ensure that you don't die. Okay, you are alive so that after the war is over, you are alive so that you can reconstruct the city, you can rebuild the business, you can rebuild your life. But if you are dead anyway, the game is over. So I think that is the first this one. So right now, my suggestion advice will be, don't worry about growth unless you happen to be in the small sliver of sectors and companies which have got tailwinds, in which case you catch the riding wave and ride it through fully and fully. For almost 90% rest of the businesses is to ensure how do you survive to fight another day, how do you live. What does that mean? That means, one, conserve cash. Okay, right? See if you can postpone all your discretionary expenses. Whatever you don't need to do, can you postpone those? Point number one. Point number two, opportunities will be there even after the lockdown ends, even if when the pandemic recovers, you will find opportunities. Opportunities are not going anywhere. You don't have to go out of the way to capture them. For 90% of the businesses which don't have specific tailwinds. So just ensure that when you come out of this, you are surviving, you have good cash reserves. At that time, you are able to aggressively go through the opportunities. Three, see if you can consolidate. These are tough times for everybody. Okay, you may find assets available at attractive prices. And there will be logic to consolidate companies together, to merge, to cut costs, to share infrastructure so that you become stronger company. So if you're a company facing headwinds, other companies, sectors, both individually they may not have the scale, they may not have the ability, but can you consolidate? Especially if they got venture capital investors, you may be able to pull in and get more capital from investors who are in both the companies. So which will be comfortable to everybody. See, a lot of times what happens in businesses is, in startups especially, the scale is small because they are still growing, and the fixed costs, the head office costs are large. The head office costs cannot be amortized over the small volume. But you know what? If you combine three such startups and have only one unified head office, the combined small amounts of the three startup together may give you enough volume to amortize the head office cost. Okay, right? So that definitely is a case to consolidate, to share head office costs by consolidation, make the company stronger and more profitable. So that's another possibility. This obviously has to be driven by investors as well as by the founders. There needs to be commonality. That's the third important thing, that can you do this. Fourth is, can you collaborate? Right? Normally we all will be competing, will be doing that. This is the time more for collaboration and partnerships across platforms, rather than creating something on your own, creating fixed costs on your own company inside. So if you're a company, can logistics, instead of you doing the logistics yourself, can you plug on to logistics players to be able to do the logistics? Can you plug on to digital? Can you plug on to other people, to channels, to bring in the customer, so that you stick to your core right now, reduce your fixed costs, make most of it variable through partnerships and through outsourcing and working together, rather than doing this in-house. Now, this is not the normal situation. Normally you want to build full stack companies because you want to capture the margin in every piece of the chain. Okay, you want to capture some of the logistics margin, some of the marketing margin, some of the channel margin, some of the producers margin, manufacturers margin, which is the right thing to do during normal times. But during these times, the fixed cost kills you. Therefore, it's better to make it variable. Can you variabilize your cost by partnerships and by partners, rather than being a full stack company? Last thing I will say is, debt can be a big millstone around your neck in such times.
Right.
Can you get rid of debt? If you are leveraged, you are in deep trouble. Whether you see the challenges with the Future Group that has been talked about now, whether you see the challenges with all the established companies, it is the debt servicing, repayment of debt, that can really hurt you during such crisis times. Normal times in finance, we are talk about leveraging, return on equity, how by taking debt you can leverage your return on equity and all that, which is all correct and good. But in these times can be challenged. So if you can deleverage, reduce debt, even by selling assets, part of the assets, that's great. You have seen Jio already doing that very, very successfully by raising money. There, of course, it's a very good valuation too, to be able to leverage that. So those are the things to be able to do it. So I would say growth, hold on a bit, but more importantly, take these 4 distinct steps so that you are poised for growth when we start returning to normal.
Sure. So coming back to this collaboration point, I mean, so now a whole bunch of companies have gone into collaboration mode and not thinking about, are they at some point in some step, competing on a certain process or a business, etc. Everybody is in a collaborative mode. So is there again, how do you strategically think about these collaborations? Should you have a withdrawal strategy right up front that, okay, till this point, I'm going to collaborate for something, but after that, I should have a definitive way to come back? Or there are, certain areas that I should just not go into collaboration because it might infringe into something that is very, very precious and proprietary to the company. So if you can, with some examples, talk about good collaborations versus bad collaborations.
Yeah. No, so I think it's a valid point. There are certain DNAs that are there. There are some sectors where it is winner take all. So therefore, in those sectors to collaborate would not make sense, because you are you are strengthening your competitor, right? So if you were to look at it, I don't see Pepsi and Coca-Cola collaborating, or Swiggy and Zomato collaborating. That would not be very useful, okay, right? Because that will be counterintuitive, and that doesn't make sense, right? And also collaboration, if you are very strong, if you have enough cash balance and you are helped by tailwinds, or you think because of your cash balance and your multi product portfolio you'll be able to ride through, then you don't have to collaborate out of a desperation or out of a very strong need for survival. Then you can look at actively raising money like Geo has done, or you are looking at acquisitions like some of the Chinese companies want to acquire globally companies because they are available at distressed valuation. So in those cases, you can afford to be slightly picky and choosy. For most of the other cases, the choice really may not be there. It's not ideal to may not be ideal to collaborate, but you're doing it because you need support to survive.
Right.
Okay, without collaboration, you may die. So it is the survival instinct more than anything else that making you reach out and collaborate with people whom otherwise you would have stayed with. Take for example, aggregators and cloud kitchens. Okay?
Right.
Even before this, cloud kitchens saw aggregators as competition. Okay, right? And aggregators like Zomato, Swiggy also started their own branded cloud kitchens that increased the distress. That increased the distress between this. Same thing they saw between restaurants and aggregators. Restaurants filed cases against aggregators. They boycotted aggregators. All kinds of tussle happened even before COVID. Come COVID, there is no choice. Right? Restaurant cannot have dine-in option. They have to collaborate to be able to do that. Right? Cloud kitchens by themselves cannot generate enough volume and do delivery on their own, because it loses money. It's a loss-making proposition. Burr will increase to have your own delivery and your own customer acquisition. So you work on Swiggy and Zomato platforms. Swiggy and Zomato also from their side have cut down their cloud kitchen expansion, cloud kitchen staff, cloud kitchen aspirations, because Swiggy and Zomato have got so many problems on their own core business that they don't want to open one more front of having their own branded cloud kitchens when they have enough cloud kitchens available and all the restaurants are willing to supply to them. So you see a full collaboration has come up now as a result of this, because everybody in a normal high growth situation, bull situation, you would have seen these players, cloud kitchens, aggregators, restaurant, trying to compete or reluctantly collaborate. Now it's not reluctant collaboration, now it's survival collaboration. So that's already very clearly happening. So that's one great example. That's one great example. Similarly, if you see there are alliances like open source initiative by competitors coming together.
Right.
We either create like a ACT fund. It's a grant created by venture capitalists and all that to help COVID-related startups to get some funding. Right? It's a social capital that has been put together. So here you see venture capitalists who normally compete, okay, coming together to sit on the same table, part of the same investment committee to be able to do that. Similarly, there are industry organizations like healthcare, home healthcare, where people have come together to define some standards and help out. So that's what is happening. So you have to judiciously choose. I think you would rather err on the side of collaborating too much in today's situation when survival is at stake than worry about destruction of value post normal situation. Many of these will automatically unwind as normalcy returns, which is perfectly fine.
Right. And this is perhaps the most important question in today's environment. How do you really approach funding? Because it is during tough situations and crisis that the promoter faces the maximum risk of getting undervalued. First of all, would you agree? And secondly, how do you navigate this?
Yeah, so this obviously, like we discussed before, Unfortunately, startups have a cash burn. They don't make profit. They don't have cash reserves out of the profit they generated. So startups burn money every month. They require risk capital, venture capital money every month. If the startups are in a fortunate situation where they have raised money very recently and lot of runways left, then that's the most fortunate. They can hunker down, they can cut costs, they can take pay cuts, they can shut verticals, they can stop expansion, and they can conserve cash for the next 6, 8, 12 months. Those are the happiest situation. The other situation is where you are in the middle of a fundraise, you have got 2-3 months runway, you have worked for the last 6 months to go on a roadshow for fundraise, you have done everything required for a fundraise, you are speaking to investors, but no offer has come in, advanced talks are going on, but your money is running out in the next 2-3 months. Now all that has come crashing to a standstill. That's the worst situation to be in. In between, you have various situations where you have runways or cash in the bank for next 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, and all that. So you have multiple. In all cases, I think it is a real nightmare, because from an entrepreneur's point of view, founder's point of view, it is never about valuation, never about dilution, never about stake. It is always about survival. I think it's a Western concept which people have bought into Indian startup ecosystem, that Indian entrepreneurs, founders are worried about dilution, valuation, and all that stuff. We are all very emotional people. We put life, heart, and soul into our startups. And that's true not just for entrepreneurs, even employees, professionals. We take our work very seriously, very passionately, and work-life balance exists rarely in India. People work at all times. People work on weekends. I'm sure you do. Journalists do that every day. Okay, right? You have never thought about it. So that's the Indian culture. So we are so passionate. So things like valuation, dilution, what will happen is least in the minds of the entrepreneurs. First and foremost is, can I survive? Can I ensure that without too much of disruption in terms of layoffs or pay cuts, I'm able to come through this? Believe me, media sensationalizes the number of layoffs, pay cuts, and all that stuff. Okay, right? And many times they ridicule the entrepreneur or the founder, saying that, oh my God, they hired so many people, they are sacking so many people, and all that. Right? Without realizing the emotional trauma, nightmare, pain the entrepreneur goes through in firing even one person. By nature, we are born to win. We are explorers. We are dreamers. We like to hire. We like to capture market. We like to expand. We want to open new vertical geographies. That's what is in our DNA. That's what gives us the kick. That's what keeps us alive. That's what makes us take the risk. This is not what we want, what we like to do, but forced to do it. Okay? So this is really an extremely tough time. So what entrepreneurs need to do? First, cut costs, ensure you maximize your runway with the money that you have, because any fundraising is going to be very tough. It's going to be tough on multiple reasons and multiple aspects. One, the investors also are clueless, like the entrepreneurs are, on how long is the impact going to last, when will we come back to normal, and what will be the new normal. Nobody knows. If somebody says they know it, they are lying, because it's a once in a century pandemic. This is extremely unknown. The variables are not known, so you cannot do any modeling. And if you cannot do modeling, you cannot take decisions. You don't know even the parameters for modeling. That's unfortunate situation. True for entrepreneur, true for founder, true for manager, CEO, true for investor. So investor is not going to do it. Two, investors also raise money from their limited partners, their investors called LPs. LPs are all shaken up. They are telling the VC fund managers, saying that go slow, go cautious, hold on to investment, hold on to drawdowns. Let's see where this lands. Let's first understand the landscape, extent of the landscape, extent of the damage, extent of the problem. So go slow. 2. 3, most of the investors have already in their portfolio companies where they have already invested, which are in various stages of trouble, requiring support. So the first job of investors is towards their existing portfolio companies to support them, to help them. They don't have the bandwidth or the time or the appetite or the money to support new conversation, new companies where they are not inside. So all this makes it very tough for an entrepreneur or founder to be able to close a new funding. So realize that it's not going to happen easily. It's not going to happen anytime soon. It's definitely not going to happen now when we don't even know what to project because we don't know the extent of the problem. So therefore, extend the runway, cut costs. If you are fortunate to have existing investors, go back to them, raise some bridge amount of money, whatever is the valuation, raise bridge. Far easier to raise with money from existing investor to be able to do it. 3, if you can go to a new segments, can generate value like some companies have done by delivering online grocery. If you can make some positive cash flow, that is great. And 4th is revenue you can't control, cost you can control. Postpone discretionary expenses, renegotiate your interest payment, renegotiate your rent payment. See if you can take salary cuts, especially for manager and above employees. See if you can delay bonuses. See if you can renegotiate existing vendor contracts. Anything and everything is fair in a once in a century pandemic to cut costs, to delay expenditure. And that is what all of us are doing because our back is to the wall. And to my friends in media, okay, don't sensationalize. Be kind. Right? These are tough times that they are going through. And therefore be supportive. So this is not to say that you should not call out excesses during normal times. You should not call out the failures of the wrong people benefiting from the grants and from the measures and the right people not benefiting. If media does not do it, who else is going to do it? They have to call out. And media has done a tremendous job, even in for startups. When the angel tax issue came up and other issues came up, it is media that took it up very strongly. Because of it, such a small sector got the attention of the government and Prime Minister's office, and we were able to get it addressed. So there is a lot of good thing that is happening. What I am saying is sensationalizing the headline wrongly because it is sensational, right? That is the challenge. But there is, I think, enough and more. All the constituents, including startups, need to look at their own house to see where they have gone. Just in defense of the people whom media criticizes, the fact is that we are all by nature geared for bull market. We are all geared for optimism. We are all dreamers. So don't be surprised that we want to conquer the world in best of the times or in normal times. That is in our DNA. Okay, right? So do applaud us at that time. But when things when things fall down badly, okay, right? report it, don't sensationalize it. Anyway, that's a different complete conversation for it.
Sure. So we'll take a 5-second break, and when we come back, I'm just going to take a few questions that we've got from participants.
Gifting for memorable brands. Call now.
So the first question is from Harnil Oza, founder and CEO, Hyperlink Infosystem. Do you think mobile app is a must-have for businesses in today's competitive market?
Yeah, I think given the adoption of mobile internet and how almost the smartphone has become an extension of your arm, it's very important for companies to be on mobile. Whether you have a mobile app or you're on mobile internet, mobile web, that is fine. Progressive app, that is perfectly fine. But you have to be on mobile. Also, with the COVID situation happening, where we are talking about contactless payment, where we don't want to have this, it will almost become mandatory for people to have even a low-end smartphone to be able to do any transaction. So it's extremely important that you are on app or you are on mobile platform by which people can order, pay, conduct transactions, get messages. Also, WhatsApp will become almost a standard for conducting businesses. So again, Facebook has launched e-commerce through Facebook for stores and all of those. So I think it will become impossible, just like without an email ID, without being able to have a web download of your ticket, you cannot even book a rail ticket or air ticket. This will also become almost essential for you to have. So you need to have online presence, you need to have mobile presence, need not be an app, but definitely in the mobile.
Sure. The second question is from Mukul Vashish, Director, RR Solutions. How do you unlearn old business strategies and learn the new ones given the new world order? So in a sense, to rephrase this question, are there some lessons that you need to unlearn in today's situation, and what would be the new lessons?
No, that's a great question. I think one of the things that has been, this once in a century pandemic has done is changed consumer behavior, fears, expectation, and even philosophically how people look at life. Therefore, many of the skills that were there in the past are no longer relevant. We need to learn a lot more newer skills. Therefore, I think the ability to learn, getting an ability to learn is more critical for survival, growth, and prosperity in future, rather than a specific domain knowledge. Right? How do you do it? I think some of it is already forced. Habits change more because of force. I never thought I would do so much of webinars, so much of television interviews on the computer, on video conferencing, or do conduct meetings on the video conference. I have slowly learned. A lot of it has to do with the tools available for remote working, whether it's Telegram, whether it's Slack, whether it's how do you work, all that. And some of it is behavioral change, the way we circulate notes before the meeting, the way we started using email and documentation prior to meeting, which we never used to do because we used to meet face to face. So those are changes that will come. Some will be forced on you because of the requirement, but as you pick up the skill set, because you are forced to, focus on those that help you become a better manager, become a better entrepreneur, become more productive, and able to work together in teams. I think that is what is important. Other thing is, which is undersaid, is the entire emotional and mental well-being of people, their colleagues, the organization. That's very important. Right? One of the challenges is due to remote working, due to social distancing, due to reduction in number of people in a meeting, all of that stuff, the human interaction has gone away. What was typically water cooler conversations earlier, where people used to share, joke, flirt with each other, pull each other's leg, all of that has gone away. So productivity, purpose has increased very clearly, but all the softer elements have gone away. See how to learn to create those moments in a virtual world. Okay? That's important. How do we create that same feeling? Okay? One of the things that leaders and CEOs and entrepreneurs and managers face is that can they tell their employees, can they communicate more frequently? Can they communicate not just what to do and how to do, the actual clinical aspects of the role, but also the emotional aspects of the role? Can you not just why and how of what employees need to do, but why they are doing it? Why what they are doing is important. A bigger, larger whole picture needs to be able to be communicated to people so that emotionally they feel connected, they are able to deliver more. All this is not important when you're coming to a single room, single office, seeing each other's face, looking at each other's dress, commenting on the hairstyle, all of that goes away. In a Zoom or in a virtual world, we are unlikely to do that. When you sit in front of it, you feel more officious. You're not going to comment about the earring you're wearing or your hairstyle or something like that, right? So that banter gets missed. So both the banter on the lighter side and more collective sense of purpose on the other side, all of this we need to learn. So in short, huge amount of learning, and I think it will take a few months for us to learn. Hopefully, being smart as all of us are, we will come out of it learning these new skills.
Sure. So another question from Prashant Shukla, HBD Consulting LLP from Bombay. So he says, at this time, raising capital, of course, is a difficult issue. Are there any other options one can explore?
Yeah, it's a good question. See, capital raising for an entrepreneur, for a startup, for a SME owner, capital is the most important thing. If you don't have capital, you're dead. With capital, you will survive. So it is tough. Uh, you can explore debt. There are new government credit guarantee schemes and others that have come up. If you are in those sectors which are eligible, you can explore collateral-free debt. That is one that exists. Two, if you are lucky to have customer base which is not affected by COVID the same way, see if you can change the terms of your current contract with your customers and make it a win-win situation. What do I mean by that? If you are having a customer who has got uh, more cash but wants a better deal, wants a higher discount, whereas you are in a business where you need cash more, can you trade off price, margin, profitability for upfront cash payments? Or similarly, it could be vice versa, right? If you are a person who has got more cash, can you strike a long-term contract with a higher price but give a more extended payment term? If your normal payment term is 30 days, you're expecting money from your customer. Can you give your customer 90 days to pay, but ask him to pay a higher price? So there are possible, based on what is the relative pressure on the customer and the company, to rechange the terms for the next 3 months to be able to do it. To give an example, we have gone to some landlords in some of our startups companies where we said we are facing the challenge of not being able to pay. We will extend our rental agreement. It's coming to an end in August, but we'll extend it for one more year so that you don't have to look for anybody. But can we reduce the rent by 25% for the next 1 year and give me moratorium for next 3 months? Look at it from the landlord's point of view. Landlord has got his asset already there. Very unlikely he will get the same rent because things are very bad. If you are going to vacate in 3 months, he's going to have tough time finding another tenant. He's going to keep his commercial space vacant for at least 3 more months in a year in order to find it. So anyway, 25% of his rent is gone. So by trading both the requirements, we have been able to successfully do a win-win situation. Similarly, we have gone to some select employees and said, can you work half time? Go and find some other job, consulting or other thing that you're able to do. We'll pay you half the salary. Okay. Actually, they have taken it because for them, they are in a situation where if they get half time free, they can pursue their hobby, they can learn something new, they can find another consulting gig assignment, and half-time certainty of salary ensures that their home fires keep burning, so they have minimum. So there is a way to do win-win. So there are ways in which to raise money to be able to do that. Specifically in the startup sector, venture debt is a very good asset class. Even though closing a venture debt even today has got some of the challenges of closing a venture capital investor, same challenges we talked about earlier, but it's a bit easier. So look at venture debt as asset class. So pure debt, venture debt, your customers, your suppliers renegotiating contracts with them to be able to do it are many ways to be able to raise money.
Sure. We'll take one last question from Anil Dhankar, Potential Equity. He says, is there any business that you think today is a great time to launch and grow?
Oh, there are lots and lots of businesses today which you can launch and grow. As they say, crisis is too good an opportunity to waste. So if you don't have legacy challenges, you don't have large debt, you're not in a business of airline or cruise line or travel which is bogged with problems and you have existing things to handle, then you're in a great place to look at new businesses. Look at consumer behavior change. Look at what people will buy, how people will think. what is going to be the new normal, and launch business for those. So the areas are unlimited. Okay, right? People will hate going to crowded, air-conditioned, closed spaces. So anything that is virtual, anything that can be done at home, anything that can be done online, anything that can be done internet are great opportunities to do that. In that, whatever is essential, whatever is big pain points, whatever is needed are great. Okay, right? So if you can't go to a restaurant, if you can't go to a mall, if you can't go to a cruise line, if you can't go to a crowded auditorium, how are you going to get entertainment? How are you going to get food? How are you going to get cuisine? How are you get to learn new stuff and all of that stuff? So online, virtual, gaming, sports, entertainment, online education, direct to consumer brands. I'm not going to go to a mall and spend 2 hours. I don't want to be in a shop with 10 people. Can I create the same experience, have the same choice virtually online? What are the sectors that will get? Sanitization will become important, hygiene will become important, avoiding infection will become important, immunity will become important, health will become important, eating nutritious food will become important. So can you develop product in these spaces? Supply it direct to consumer. Why direct to consumer? One, I don't want to go out. Two, I want to avoid crowded places. Three, because I am more time, I am more online. If I'm more online, I'm more on social media. So the entire community commerce, content commerce, social media commerce on the mobile, can I do? And can I appeal to increased need for health, safety, immunity, sanitization, hygiene, nutrition by developing product in those sectors? All of those are huge opportunity. Similarly, in B2B space, the B2B buyers' needs, requirements are changed completely. Can I develop new products and solutions that will empower HR managers, CEOs, CXOs, administration managers, facilities managers to run their offices better? One of our companies, Hungerbox, which is into digital B2B cafeteria management. Okay. They have seen their business come down by 95%. Okay, right? So because work from home, people are not, offices are not open, so there are no digital cafeteria in offices. What they did in the last 2 months is they have worked with administration facilities managers to develop new product that ensures that when the offices open, the needs and concerns of administration managers, HR managers, and facilities management managers are completely and fully addressed. How to maintain social distancing in office, how to maintain hygiene, how to do tracing, how to ensure. So all of that, the entire product has changed. So it's not a new business, but it's a fully new product because of the new normal. So that is what they have done. Why the opportunity has come now, right? So that is a great time. They say that when the sea is rough, the fishermen tend to their nets. They repair the nets. This is the time for you to do it. So please go ahead. Look at the new normal. You are lucky because it's a new normal. Any crisis creates huge pressure on incumbents because they have legacy problems, they have legacy debts, they have legacy issues, they have legacy challenges to handle. But the same crisis favors new entrepreneurs, favors people who are coming in now, favors startups, favors young people who don't have any such baggage whatsoever. But given this is based more on democratized platforms, remote working, internet, contactless, it favors young entrepreneurs a lot more than bald old people like me. So this is your time.
But we'll come to you for funding. So thank you so much. It was a really lively and insightful session for me. I'm sure all the participants would have enjoyed too. Thank you really very much for your time. And of course, I have to thank our partners, Hyperlink Infosystems and RR Solutions, for to facilitate, make this Master Speak really possible. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.